All right, we're at 6 o'clock. All right, first item on the agenda, let's call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock and roll call.
Nyla Fry. Here. Trisha Brown.
Here.
Sam Kaufman. Kristen Runge.
Here.
Aaron Moran. Here. Joe Zitzelsberger.
Here.
Robert McPherson.
Here.
All right, next item on the agenda, confirmation of open meeting compliance.
I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 12/15. The final agenda was posted in all three official posting locations on 12/14, and the final agenda and packet were made available online on 12/14. Just two common requests for our audience is to be sure you sign in on the sign-in sheet with your name, address, and municipality for accurate record keeping. And those interested in participating in public comment, please hand in your form prior to that agenda item.
All right, do we have any public comments?
We have one, Maria Pack at 1000 Wexford Drive, Waunakee.
I told my husband before I left the house I wasn't talking tonight. I lied. The question that I have regards something that's coming up in the agenda later on. It has to do with the South Street closures that are going to be taking place. And my big concerns are, I certainly know my way around getting away from South Street. I can pretty much get any way out of Waunakee as I want to. But I'm concerned about Heritage being taken down, South Street being closed, St. John's parking affected on Sundays, on the weekends. How are people going to get to the food pantry if they come around the back way? The parking is the wrong way and they can't get out on South Street because it's one way. And I heard that there was some sort of a meeting for the residents of South Street. And I would like to hear that more people besides just those people who live there get involved. South Street is used by 2 schools. There will be summer school in place. And I don't know what's being discussed. So for those people who are speaking later about South Street, maybe you have the answers, but those are my quick questions just by going through the packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Any other public comments?
I have no other forms.
And there's no Zoom participants at the moment.
All right, and it's South Street, it's on the consent agenda. And, pardon? Not for long, yeah. So, all right, let's move on to the next item. Does anybody want anything pulled from the consent agenda?
3, 4, 5, and 7, please.
All right. 3, 4, 5, and 7. All right, so we'll move that from the consent agenda, the remaining items. Do we have a motion to approve the remaining items, items 1, 2, 5, and 6 on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve items 1, 2, 5, and 6 on the consent agenda.
Second. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then let's go through those in orders. Approve elector inspection appointments, number 3.
These all should be fairly quick. For number 3, I just wanted to point out Robert is on that list, but it is not a concern. That was one thing that there's, because of, you're not in this particular one, but you could be for the next election. I had talked to Carla just to find out how that works, and she can probably say it better than I can, but.
Basically, if anybody that's running for a office is on the ballot, they are not going to be working an election just due to conflict. So if Robert or anybody else is not on an election, they can most certainly work the elections.
All right.
That pretty well covers it.
If it makes you feel better, I did the presidential election on a year that I was also on the ballot, and Carla and Lynn were very professional about it.
Yeah, I'm totally confident that they are. It was just one of those things I saw it come up and said, let's make sure that this is public and that everybody is aware of that scenario. So in light of that, I will recommend, or I will move to approve the election inspectors as presented for the 2024-2025 election cycle.
I'll second it. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Item number 4, approve Strand Task Order 23-06, Amendment number 1 for 2024 Public Works Projects, South Street. So.
Okay, for that one, I had asked Bill if he would just speak real quick to these, sort of a quick overview of it. What's the potential timeline, the effect, those sorts of things, so.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, at this point, we're hoping it to be like a 12 to 16 week project. Once we get bids out, we get we get a accepted bid, we'll have a better idea of that timeline as far as how soon they can start, so that we know how soon it'll end. Obviously, with the South Street project, we'll have to wait till school ends. The South Street project is only running from 4th Street to 8th Street. So as far as getting through that area, we're hoping to keep the intersection from Kearney Way to South Street over to 8th Street so people can get out through there. There will be at times that we may have to close that down for connecting a water line and storm sewer to be drained right there. There's a storm drain that runs along just, what is it, south of 8th Street there that we'll need to connect to. As far as anything else, I guess it's just all gonna be determined once we get a contractor online and able to go.
All right, any other questions? That anyone has? The meeting, so there will be a meeting?
We had 2 open houses, both one for Prospect and one for South Street. The South Street, we had, I believe it was three people that attended,
Okay,
5 people. Thanks, Nyla. And basically all their concerns was more the fact that their driveway and how the sidewalks, because we'll be putting 5-foot sidewalks in there, and how the aprons are going to work into the street. And that there'll be availability, like we had told them. We're hoping that they'll be able to get to their place at least 90% of the time. Obviously, there'll be those times when the concrete needs to form and set up that they won't have access to that. So they all seem to be satisfied with their comments. And actually, I think we've had one person call us back when she was questioning trees, which we've going to put some trees back in. So
great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is there, I know there's usually at least some sort of not really a campaign, but at least a communication that goes out to those immediate residents. Is there, because of how South Street runs, is there any plan to?
yes, we will have a construction newsletter that will be on the website, updating the progress as we go weekly, so that everybody knows. As far as even a detour route or something like that, basically, we're hoping to run most of the construction stuff out north of South Street to Main Street, and then down south there, school there. We're working with school on also creating a truck route, I guess I'll say, for them to be able to do what they're going to do as well. So we're working close with schools on all this.
Okay, appreciate it.
Bill, I'm assuming similar to what you all did with the the power line project, just notifying neighbors a couple days in advance
Correct.
when their driveways will be restricted, or even the food pantry if there's an alternate that needs to take place.
Correct.
Yeah. Awesome.
We'll make sure all that's on the village website.
All right, thank you very much, Bill. Any other questions?
Is there any sort of a good avenue other than the village website? For anybody who maybe is not particularly tech savvy?
They're welcome to give us a call. We'd be more than happy to talk to them on the phone
Okay.
and give them their explanations. Website seems to be our best avenue right now as far as getting notifications out.
Yeah, I would think it's gonna cover the bulk. It's
Mhm.
the few exceptions that are probably here and there that I'm almost wondering if we could post it along with like meeting minutes or something in that area, but
We can research that. We'll look
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah.
No, great suggestion. We'll look
Okay.
into that.
then I will move to approve Strand Order 2306, Amendment Number 1 for 2024 Public Works Improvements, South Street, as recommended by the Public Works Committee.
I second it.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Number 7, approve vacation adjustment for Sergeant Nate Gretzinger.
Is that both or
Well, there's
there's another one?
Pardon? Number 5. Oh, thank you. I did
Yep.
not circle that. Approve Strand Task Order 2307, 2024 Public Works Project for Prospect Road and Pleasant Drive.
And I don't know that there's really any significant difference to this. I think it's pretty much the same sort of questions, but different location.
Yeah, there again, we held an open house 2 weeks ago on that. We had quite a few neighbors that came. Pretty much the same scenario. questions on how their lot's gonna be from. Obviously, they're all getting new sidewalks down there. It's an area that's never had sidewalks before, so there're gonna be some grading that needs to take place in some of these people's lawns to make it all work. And some trees again that'll be removed that we'll be replacing, so.
And again, the 12 to 16 week kind of.
Correct, we're still hoping that.
Hey, I would just like to add that a few years ago, Berlin Avenue was done where I live. They did put in sidewalks that were never there before. They did a very good job. It went very smoothly. And from what I could see, Patrick Street did this year. So I'm hoping for the same for Prospect Road and South. I realize that South is more complicated, but I know with the coordination that the village will be doing with the schools and the contractors, it will go smoothly. So thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Nope. I'll make this motion as well. Move to approve the Strand Task Order 2307 for 2024 Public Works Improvements, Prospect Road and Pleasant Drive as recommended by the Public Works Committee.
I'll second that one.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now on to number 7, approve vacation adjustment for Sergeant Nate Gretzinger and Lieutenant Matt Plendell.
So for this one, which I'm trying to get to, there we go. Basically, I've talked with both of these guys. I've worked with both of these guys, not worked, but been involved with them. Both fantastic officers. And the biggest concern that I had with this is if we move them to the 9 years level, where does that put them in the overall? Making sure that they still have some space for advancement. And in fact, there's quite a bit of space for advancement in that vacation schedule. So I'm very happy with it. I don't know if there's any other questions or comments from anyone.
I was happy to see the adjustment as well.
Yeah.
Any others?
Okay, then I will move to approve. Oh, whoops, that's the wrong one. Where did we go to?
57.
I got too many Strand task orders in front of me. There we go. Move to approve moving Sergeant Nate Gretzinger and Lieutenant Matt Plendell to the after 9 years of service level on the vacation schedule.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now on to reports. Public Works Committee.
Okay, that's me. We've already had the discussion of what we did at Public Works. We've had 2 open houses, one pertaining to Prospect Road and one to South Street. The open houses I felt went very well, and I'm looking forward to seeing the projects done. For those of you who live in the areas, it's a very interesting process and it was very educational for me. So enjoy it. If you have grandchildren, go out with them, let them see what's going on. Perhaps one of them will be a contractor someday or be in the construction part of the development. So enjoy and make the most of it is what I have to say about it.
Excellent. Thank you, Nyla. Parks and Rec. Yeah, do you mind?
Yep, nope, sure thing. We actually listened to an update from Park. I'm gonna
Architecture.
Thank you very much, Robert. And we're able to see some of the equipment selections that they had prior to the meeting. They had an open house to have input for the accessibility areas in the park and the equipment. So it was great to see. I think the consultant was I think very receptive to some of the suggestions and modifications that were already great as far as the plan, but just to continuously improve it. And so I think for now, they're going back to work and getting the final details, equipment ordered, et cetera. And then we'll have an update probably in another month or 2.
All right, fantastic. And Community Development Authority, we had to cancel the meeting. We did not have a quorum, so we will be meeting next January, this coming January. Create Waunakee.
We also had to cancel our meeting last week. We did not have a quorum, but planning continues for the Ball of Creativity on February 17th at the library. That will be kind of one of the kickoffs to our partners in the nonprofit organization of Create Waunakee. So,
Fantastic. And library board,
and tickets are being sold, so you could
Yes.
already
get your tickets now.
mark the calendar and buy a ticket. Library board, we did meet on Friday, and I guess a few updates. The Friends of the Library raised over $7,000 at their craft fair before Thanksgiving, and Bruce Company was out on the library grounds working on some things as we kick off the grounds plan next year. So the exciting updates there, and the library will be open on MLK Day and another year of programming. So we have guest speakers, Fred Reed and Reverend Joe Baring from the NAACP. So there'll be multiple presentations there, and then I think there's a story time that day. And it's usually a busy day at the library with the finals, so mark your calendars to be at the library on MLK.
Excellent, thank you. Plan Commission.
So basically there were three things that came up at Plan Commission. The first one was approval of a mobile telecommunication tower, basically a cell tower on Sunset Lane near the police department. Second one was approval of GDP SIP amendments and a revised preliminary plat for the Heritage Hills neighborhood based on those changes being approved, as well as some previous ones. The overall density has increased by, I think it was 10 units. So an increase, not a humongous increase. And then the third one was a discussion of keeping of chickens in the village. The motion was split and the Plan Commission voted to recommend approval for chickens in the G1 district, basically schools. They failed to recommend approval for the R1, R2, R3, and R3D residential districts.
All right, thank you. And Joint Plan Commission. And Tim, that would be you.
There was no joint plan commission this last month. We anticipate there may be one in January. We're working with the applicant for on one of the agenda items, so yet to be known.
Be determined. All right. And other commissions and committees or boards.
EMS met on Thursday. There's two items of note. One is that there was in case anybody didn't know, there was a generous donation from, wow, I am blanking. Help me out, Todd. I know I did, and I absolutely am blanking on the name. Yes, but donation of AEDs in all of the parks within the village, and they came in early, I heard. So they are the EMS department is working on setting up the training for usage. Brenda, thank you. I started with a B and I knew I was going to say the wrong name. That's Rex's widow. So there is going to be a open training session on how to use an AED at Rex's sometime in late January. I don't want to give out a date because it wasn't finalized yet, but it will be in late January. I'll bring it back up here when we have the final date so that the public can get more airtime on that. And then the other item is that looking at long-term planning for prices for ambulance calls. You'll remember when I came last month, it said that responses were going up by about $250 per call. There's some other ancillary fees. There's what's called a lift assist only. That's when you've fallen and you can't get up and you need to have them come out. Funny story on that, Medicare maxes out at $69.95. So it doesn't matter what we charge, that's all they're going to pay us. But we are raising that to $100. And then the response fee, which is currently it's $50, it's moving to $75. And that's just the fee that they charge if you get in an accident, you don't need assistance or anything like that, but they come and they check you out and look at you. That's kind of a game for them to figure out the correct number, because if you're not from around here and you get an accident and Waunakee area EMS responds to you, they sometimes give fake names and drive off and don't tell you who they were so they can avoid getting billed. So if it's a low enough dollar figure, they're more likely to pay. So that's why Director Russell is going with $75. So this is the intent of this is to make up some anticipated reductions in revenue of the EMS department just based off of call volume and what they're anticipating in 2024.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And did you have a
Not for
question?
debate, but I do have a question,
Yes.
if I may. So the increase in basically I've fallen and I can't get up kind of thing. I assume even if Medicare is paying whatever that amount is, the rest becomes a write-off versus
Yep.
a bill to, okay,
Yep.
that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for the reports. On to business items. Number one, discuss and take action on referral by the village board to plan commission for an amendment to the village municipal code that would allow accessory dwellings, ADUs, by right in specified zoning contracts. So Robert or Tim, which one? Robert? Is it, you're presenting this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim gave me a ton of assistance on this, so I'll try to just have that. It'd help if I had my mic on. Thank you. Because I'm more focused on trying to share my screen. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do something here and hopefully get it right first time. Put together a little PowerPoint presentation here, and I'm not going to regale you with photos from my vacation. It's going to be an actual good one. All right. So the Zoom meeting is not cooperating with me. 1 second. I'll get there. There we go. Okay. So if you see in your packet, there's two items that are presented there. One is the ordinance proposal, and the other is a letter from the Congress for New Urbanism. One of the items that Congress for New Urbanism and later the League of Wisconsin Municipalities put out a report as well, recommended that there are certain changes that the village can undertake in order to meet its need for housing stock, affordable housing, and basically kind of bringing our code into the current, quite literally current century, since our code is a little bit aged. One of the easier items from that list is the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. And so just to talk on that briefly. So helps to understand what an ADU is. So it's a smaller independent residential dwelling unit located on the same lot as a standalone single family home. That's a really boring term. The more practical term is, you can see on there, there's different versions that an ADU can take. So don't think of an ADU as just, I stick an extra building on my property and that's my ADU. It can be a converted garage, you see on the bottom left, can be an upper attic area, top right, or on the bottom right there. Can even be down in your basement. If you're brave enough and you don't have water issues like I have, you could have an ADU down in your basement. So I put in there many names, same thing. AARP actually has a list that's about this long of what people call ADUs, but you've probably heard, I'm sure everybody's heard mother-in-law suite at least once in their life. So this is basically what an ADU is. So what makes it an ADU? It's independent, self-contained living space with its own kitchen, kitchenette, bathroom, and sleeping area. So this is an area where somebody can meet all of their sanitary and existing needs. We're not just talking a bed in a small room. We're talking you can live in there, fully live in there. Another way to look at it, it's a small residence that shares a single family lot with a larger primary dwelling. And you're going to see that that's key later on when we get into the meat of the ordinance. So what about us today? Illegal, explicitly illegal. In fact, we have a line right in our ordinance that says accessory dwelling unit shall not be occupied, or accessory unit shall not be occupied as a dwelling unit, and they shall not be used for residential purposes. You'll see in the proposal that I've submitted that this line would be completely stricken. And I'll get into, if you have concerns about the business and trade side of it, I'll get into that in a moment. So you might be asking, why am I even coming to you with this proposal? So why should we have it? Well, we've had multiple recommendations. As I mentioned at the top, the Congress for New Urbanism, and then the later report from that included the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. There's a line in there. It says permitting ADUs within neighborhoods is a good first step towards adding housing with minimal impact on existing development. We have feedback. I know that Tim participated in the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy workshops that took place over the past, it was about a year and a half total. And there, he graciously sent me a snip from there. That's actually from the section of developers. Developers are asking for municipalities to update their codes to allow for ADUs so that they can offer more units. And then it's another tool that we can put in our toolbox that we can help address the housing gap in the village without significantly changing the composition of the village. It's key. So Some advantages, as you heard me already state, it doesn't change the makeup or character of existing neighborhoods. In fact, the Congress for New Urbanism states that it adds invisible density. And when they were talking about it specific to Waunakee, they were saying invisible density in our downtown core if we wanted to target that area. Importantly, it allows incremental disbursement of new units in the village, as giving an option for growth as opposed to adding in an apartment complex or new neighborhoods. Really think about these as it's one step up from the existing property. It's not massively changing how the property is used. It adds a new price point entry in the Waunakee market. Most of these can be built in the vicinity of some of the projects that I saw out there are done in the vicinity of 80,000 all the way up to 300,000 if you want to get very fancy. So we know that land acquisition is very expensive. It adds to the cost of new housing. It adds to rental prices in housing. We know that building a new house from the ground up adds a lot of cost to that rental price as well. So this allows for a lower price point entry. It does utilize our existing infrastructure. Great part about adding an ADU. You don't have to build a whole new road for a neighborhood for that, which is less maintenance for us. I spoke with the fire department. They only care about the number of roofs there are in the village. They don't care if we add an additional unit. And police and EMS basically indicated that is if they don't have to drive further to get to it, it seems okay to them. There is a clause in the ordinance that is something that gets debated a lot in a lot of other municipalities. I opted to keep it in since this would be new to us, but making sure that either the property, either that the primary or the ADU is occupied by the homeowner ensures that we don't have absentee landlords that might be predisposed to not take as good care of the property and of their people that are renting out the space. And also importantly, it continues to grow our tax base. If you ask the school district, their number one thing that gives them more money is if they have more students coming in. And the village continues to reap the benefits from improved property values that these can bring. Also, they utilize local goods and services, so they're going to be going to shop at our local areas while they're here. How does this help our existing homeowners? I put this right at the top intentionally. It can help older residents to remain independent and age in place. We hear a lot of comments from residents that are in larger houses that they don't need as big of a house, but in today's market, it's very difficult for them to sell their property and move somewhere else and be able to afford to do it. This gives them an avenue using the existing equity in their property to add in an ADU so that they can remain on their own property and then have income from, as you see in the second bullet point, have rental income at a lower price entry point. It also allows them to have caregivers to be on site for support. There are many people who take care of multiple generations within their family. This would allow for independence and allowing so that not everybody is in the same space. They can have their own independent area. So here are the key components of the ordinance if you're reading through it. Number one, we need to allow it by right where single family residences can be built. And if you're unfamiliar with that terminology, by right means that you just need to get a building permit and go through applicable inspections and utilities improvements as needed. We want to avoid having, people who are having ADUs to have to go through the Plan Commission to get a conditional use permit. To be honest, if you don't have access to an attorney or to people that can help you, it can be incredibly daunting to do that. And this is intended for people who, these are the true small business owners who they just want to have their one little rental property, or it's for people who just want to have their family in there and they don't want to have to jump through a bunch of hoops to do it if they can follow the building instructions that we have out there already. The second key component does not increase parking requirements. You'll notice that I explicitly exempted ADUs from the parking requirements in the proposal. The reason for this is that there's no science behind this that indicates that ADUs bring additional parking burdens to a municipality that implement ADUs. They're very spread out throughout the village. I'll talk about that in a minute. Again, as I stated earlier, owner occupancy in the lot is required either in the main property or key is the ADU, because some people do want to downsize into the ADU, but they still want the income from their main property. And finally, limits to ADU size and specific limitations on external units. I know that what I proposed, Tim had already told me there's probably some changes that didn't align perfectly with our code, especially when it comes to, the amount of property that's, I'm sorry.
Oh, the rear yard?
Yeah, the rear
Yeah.
yard. Yeah, thank you. So we know that there are changes that need to do it, but that's a key way to control it. I included this graphic in here from National Association of Home Builders because one of the things that you hear a lot about or that people ponder with an ADU is, you know, and you're going to see some that are pretty small come up and you're going to say, wow, that's really tiny. Can people really live in that? And the reality is we used to live in that. If I was here proposing ordinance changes for a lot of other parts of our zoning, I'd probably get more into that. But there was a definite shift in how we built houses post World War II that changed what we thought of what you needed to have a house. And I guarantee you there are houses that were built prior to 1950 that sell for a lot more than a new house that's built today. So we definitely can and should offer these houses because they can be supported. So I put up some of the concerns that I hear. I wanted to address number one, the HOAs. So this would not impact HOAs at all. HOAs set their own rules. We're not going to tell them how that they need to do it. I know that I have a deed restriction on my house that says I can't have, even if it was legal, that I could not have an accessory dwelling unit because that was what the HOA had decided. So that's going to be up to those that live in HOAs with their deed restrictions to take it up with their HOA. I put in some comments because there are people who will come into a public hearing and say, this is going to lower my property value or we're going to have parking shortages. I can tell you by looking out there and by looking at other researchers, people have actually tried to figure out, does this actually cause this? The reality is there's no published studies that indicate that either of those outcomes occur with ADUs. In fact, if there's any research out there, it states that the slightly increased density, this incremental density that it brings actually increases surrounding property values because people have a desire to live in an area where they have more that urban appeal that ADUs can bring. And then, as I stated earlier with the parking issues, ADUs conceivably are dispersed throughout the village. You're not going to have them all concentrated in one area. So you're not going to have a bunch of people parking in one area. If you want to accomplish that, build an apartment complex that will do that. Finally, I left this in there because this is actually a true statement. This won't solve our housing affordability issues. It's not. It's not supposed to be a panacea. It's not going to solve everything for us in one shot. It's just an additional tool that we today do not allow to occur within the village. So this would open the door for us to allow one more thing that we can use. So this wouldn't be fun if I didn't have a few examples in here to show. The first one on the left, this was a 600-foot conversion of an existing property. So this was actually inside of a existing single family residence. And they built that as a conversion. It's actually intended to be wheelchair friendly for an elderly homeowner that she needed to have some care brought in, and she converted into that. The second property on the right there, that's a conversion for a garage that's 400 square foot, and that was turned into an ADU as well. And I just want to acknowledge that both Todd and Tim gave me a lot of good resources for researching this, and the items that I mentioned repeatedly. If you haven't read it, that enabling better places, a user's guide to neighborhood affordability. There's a lot of good tidbits in there. There's other changes that we should probably look into as well from that, but that was where we started on this.
All right, thanks. I think this is completely appropriate to refer to the Plan Commission, and I thank you for the work that's gone into this. I think the area that will trip up, I'll predict, is the separate building on the same lot. I think that's the part that people are gonna have some fear about, and there'll, I'm sure, be a lot of discussion and a lot of public input on that as well. I grew up in a neighborhood where a lot of the homes had been converted into 2 flats. So this was kind of a common way to maintain the ability to own apartment, to provide some living space, typically for relatives in the community that I grew up in originally. So this is something I think we're familiar with from another place and time. I would love to see our HOAs consider this, particularly if the ADU is within the footprint of the existing building, because I do think we have multifamily situations or multi-generational situations right now where we're not properly accommodating the privacy of the older parents or the younger or returning adults. So thank you for putting this together. Other comments? And Tim, I'm sorry, you had.
Just one quick one. I thought for sure, Robert, you'd have this in here, but as the village moves down the pathway of sustainability, if you're considering a way to hit a sustainability goal, this is one way of doing it without consuming any land.
That's what I get for not having my notes out in front of me. I did have eco in there. Yes, I'm sorry.
Nyla.
Okay, I agree with what both Robert and Kristen have said. I think it's something to explore. At the same time, I know there's going to be a lot of questions and it's going to take a lot of work, as anything does that we do in the village. And one of the questions that come to mind, and I asked Tim this when I spoke to him earlier tonight, if we're looking for these units to be put where a homeowner is going to reside, that may be good when they're initially being built, but what keeps it that way down the road? Because being a free market system, I don't see how we could, implement that. But that's just one of many questions that will come up. I do know that we need to do something to create a system where we have more affordable housing in Waunakee, and having been a member of the Housing Task Force, I know that this is one way to do it. And unfortunately, when the Housing Task Force looked at it, many of the members were not really for this, but I think it's one way of getting it done. One of my other concerns is, and I think Kristen kind of touched on it, I don't feel that the older neighborhoods in town should take the brunt of this density. And that somehow I'm hoping that the HOAs would work toward implementing this if homeowners want to do it.
Other comments? Tricia.
More of a question. This is probably more for Tim, but if I'm a homeowner currently and I just, as part of whether it's a home improvement or I'm adding a garage and I add a bathroom and a kitchenette just for fun, I mean, I feel like some of these may exist already just as part of development. So I was actually surprised that this was, I mean, I don't know. I think that maybe it's happened organically, it hasn't been an issue or hasn't, but yeah, I don't know if there's like a process that people go through where this would get flagged or already in the current.
It depends, I'll say. So as Robert pointed out, by our ordinance, technically it's not allowed, but I would be surprised if there aren't, I'll say, several of these, especially given the size of some of the homes in the area. There's certainly the capacity, the space capacity to do that. And if for example, someone wanted to say, oh, this is an entertainment area in our basement, and it just so happens to have a kitchen and a bathroom and a sleeping area,
Right.
all those things, that's all it is. But, so it wouldn't surprise me if there are some of these already in the village.
Well, I think maybe the point of that is if we go through this, if we refer this is to, if there is not an issue in that situation, we're not causing issues, for lack of a better way to put it, but.
I can put in, and I did put this in there because I know this would get more into the meat of like the technical side of it, where I get over my skis immediately, so I'm not going to attempt to go there. And I know Tim could probably answer this better, but I believe the intent of these also is like they establish their own street address when it's an ADU. So it could be, it would technically be, like converting a single family a little bit to a duplex, but like in a much smaller scale. So to your point, I agree with you. There probably are some questionably built ones within the village that are, but they're probably not legally renting them. I hope not legally renting them out as like their own unit, but they probably are. So this would allow us to, but this would give us a venue to get, I think, the fair share of payment of taxes on those, to the municipality. So.
And I think from what I've been reading on them, it typically starts with, or it often starts with a family member needing the accessory dwelling unit. So it is the separate entrance, the sometimes firewall and whatnot. You wouldn't necessarily have an extra address, so you wouldn't be 1316A, 1316B on that, but this would permit it and like acknowledge it. So, yeah, Erin.
Yeah, I'm in support of us going further with this. I don't feel great about the current requirement in this to have the property owner living there. I just am not sure that to me, I think we're assuming that they would be taking better care of it. There's a lot of people that live here that own houses a few blocks away. or in another neighborhood and they rent. And maybe they're the ones with the ability to go down this avenue and, so I'm just not sure I feel great that we have that in there right now, but I'm in support of us. I guess adding this, but removing it from the code.
Excellent. Thank you. And Joe?
Got several different notes here. First one, or first several, I guess, are kind of playing off of what Tricia was saying. Are we aware of any that have been granted within the village based on a conditional use permit or anything of that nature?
No, I'm not.
Not even that, okay. And then as far as addressing goes, you said they can kind of make that up, so if we've got, 923 and 925, they can come up with 923 A and B, or,
Yeah, it would likely be that, an addition like that.
okay. And then this is sort of just a broad, I'm still learning here, but how is this significantly different than duplexes, other than this tends to be after the initial construction versus intently created as two dwelling units?
I can take this one if you want. There is a maximum size on the ADU. It can be no greater
okay.
than 50% of the original property.
Perfect, okay,
And we can go lower. That was like the first proposal.
okay. That's good. Let's see here, and I assume it needs to have a separate entrance or not necessarily?
Again, it would depend on how they want to do it, but yes, the
But that's-
preference would be that they have a separate
Okay.
entrance.
And these are all things that ultimately we need to work through and spell out and.
If there's specific concerns, yes, because some of these things should play into our existing building code, if I understand the code correctly. So we would want to be careful that we don't try to over legislate something that already has rules out there that they can
Yep.
follow.
Totally agree. The other two things here, the urbanism thing, I wrestle with a little bit because I don't necessarily think of Waunakee as urban, in the sort of the classic sense. But I can still see where this, really seems to make some sense. And then, the last thing I'll say is I have a friend that did this in Madison. It turned out incredibly well. And I absolutely agree with referral to the plan commission.
All right. Now, when looking at the packet, I don't recall seeing a specific motion worded or listed out here. So can we make one up?
That's my fault because Carla asked me if I wanted to have something in there and I foolishly assumed that there would be that's on me. I'm sorry.
Then, I make the motion that we refer the proposed ADU ordinance for discussion and action to the plan commission. Does that sound like a good motion? All right, I'm learning after all this time. All right,
I'll second that. Mhm.
All right, any discussion on the motion?
Will this come back to us
Yes.
then? Okay, that's
Yes, yeah,
nice.
absolutely, yeah. All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discuss and take action on a correction instrument that would properly identify the utility easements on residential lots within the plat of Arboretum Village. And Tim, I believe this is you.
Thanks, Kristen. This issue actually came up, I believe it was last month when we were reviewing a certified survey map that combined two lots in the Arboretum Village neighborhood. And when we were looking at that, we discovered this, I'll call it an oversight. The reason I call it an oversight, which I mean, I wasn't here at the time, but when you look at when the plat was recorded, which was fall of 2020, we were in the height of COVID. I don't know if at the time of approval, if all of the directions made its way all the way through the approval process per se. And so when the plat was recorded, this specific note was missing. This is the note regarding the easements applicable to all lots is common on many other neighborhoods in the village. So really what this is a correction instrument is a little formal. It's called an affidavit of correction. It gets recorded at the Register of Deeds, the listing of the applicable parcel ID numbers. And then essentially that corrects that plat with what was, I believe, intended to be the original alignment of the easements. So it's pretty straightforward. This is, I'd say, not real common, but it's not uncommon. But again, I think the condition at the time, given the nature of COVID, it doesn't surprise me that it may have been something that slipped through the cracks at that time. So staff is recommending approval, but we do need village board approval for this to get recorded.
All right. Did we have any questions? There was a lot of paperwork that came along with this. Any questions on what we read in the paperwork? Go
I
ahead.
do.
Joe.
I just want to verify, we're not aware of any utilities that have been placed outside of the easements that didn't exist, I guess.
Good question. Yeah, we did look at that to make sure that that issue was satisfactory and yes, in answer to your question, there aren't any that we are aware of that will be placed outside.
All right. Any further discussion?
Sam, the lots that are redlined out, are those were consolidated?
Correct. Those, I
Okay.
think 49 and 50, those are the ones we looked at
Just
last month.
confirming that.
All right.
All right.
Just,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say thank you for catching this and we're thankful to have great staff. And I'll move to approve the correction affidavit, subject to satisfaction of the community development director and the village attorney.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, motion carries. And I think we need to mention that that is the last item that you are presenting in your official career, because you are retiring at the end of the year and your last day will be on Friday.
That is correct.
That is correct.
Congratulations. Tim.
Congratulations. Yeah. And on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for the work that you've done and
Thank
how
you.
you've contributed to the health and the growth of the village. We
Yeah,
appreciate
well,
it very
thanks for
much.
the opportunity. Thanks, Todd, and those who hired me. So
All right.
hopefully I've made a little difference to the positive.
Yeah, you have. And we hope to see you in the future, that you won't be a stranger.
I think you will. We're not moving and we live fairly close, so.
All right.
I'll at least be biking.
So 1-800 call Tim. So, all right. Thank you
I'm
so
willing to
much.
share-
On behalf
oh,
of all of
yeah.
us. Yeah.
While we're sad to be losing Tim, I can report that we have hired a new community development director. Her name is Lauren Dietz, Dietz. She's going to be coming here from Iowa. We shall not hold that against her because she is a UW-Madison graduate. But since Madison, she's gotten 3 more master's degrees in public policy, planning, and business administration. So she comes with career experience in municipal and private planning firms and is really eager to join us. Her first day is going to be right around the corner on January 8th.
Excellent. And Tim, you were involved in our hiring. So,
Yeah, we met this past Friday remotely to kind of start going through the upcoming projects, so.
excellent. All right. Thank you very much. It is 6:48. Our agenda looks pretty thin from this point on. Does anyone have a motion they would like to make?
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting ends at 6:48.
Record.